Hi, welcome to Lupus Beats podcast, where we shine a spotlight on lupus who are bossing it in business, inspiring others, and making a mark in the lupus community. I'm your host, Shedrica Holmes, on a mission to showcase the incredible journeys of lupus warriors turned entrepreneurs, influencers, and advocates. So get ready for empowering stories, insightful conversations, and a dose of inspiration. This is not just a podcast, it's a platform for you to dream again. So join me as we explore the possibilities beyond lupus and celebrate the resilience of lupus community. Hi guys, welcome back to another episode of the Lupus Beats podcast. And today I have Miss Amanda Chay, and I am just super excited to hear from her. She got so much to share with us about her book and her journey with living with lupus. But the most intriguing question that I have is her shared experience with her daughter. So let's welcome to the show, Miss Amanda Chay.
Thank you very much. I appreciate your time having me on.
Yes, ma'am. I'm so glad you made time throughout your time schedule
Yeah,
to talk to
of
me.
course.
Yeah,
Yeah,
you're so cool.
it's my highlight of my day. I've been playing, besides the eclipse that's coming right when we're done.
Yeah. I saw that. So I want to ask you, what inspired you to write The Girlfriend's Guide to Lupus? And was there a specific moment or experience that motivated you to share your journey with others?
Well, I'll begin by saying I love books. I've
Mm,
always loved to read, so I knew I would write something one day. I thought it'd be a children's book. But after I was diagnosed, and right, we all go home and Google, and then I got some books out there, and the books were very clinically dry. And
yeah.
I was left with so many questions like, well, what really happens? I don't want to know about B cells and lymphocytes. I want to know the real stuff. And so I just created a book, and The Girlfriend's Guide to Lupus was always the name. I just instantly was like, I'm going to create a book for women. I started writing, but luckily I didn't read about how to write a book or what's involved or the cost involved, or I might have greatly deterred myself. I probably would have not finished, but instead I just simply committed, and I'm very stubborn. So I just pushed through, and I wanted women to know that I was just like them, that there were some things that I learned across the way that could help, but I still, as you probably know when you've read the story, like I still screw things up all the time. I know what to do and I still do the wrong thing. So I
Yeah.
wanted some women to have hope that there's no perfect way to deal with this, that simply trying and being vulnerable and then trying again is the way to go.
Yeah, because definitely in your book you mentioned taking charge of your health after being diagnosed with lupus. Could you share some of the key strategies you implemented to regain control of your health?
Good question. Some of the ways that I did that was first to really, really deepen my self-awareness. Like before things just happen and you might be, not really give it much understanding or much awareness. So I got really nitty-gritty on how my body responded on a daily basis. And I still do. Like, oh, why do I feel like this? Did I do something yesterday? So that's the first thing I did. The second thing is I really armed myself with education. Writing this book, if you found me around the house where I wrote, I would repeatedly yell like, "This sucks! Lupus is bad!" And my husband would be like, "I know you keep saying that." I'm like, "It is." So education is really the power that we have there. And then the third, I am tenacious when it comes to my health. My family may love me the best they can. They would do anything I asked them, but they don't live in this body every single day. They don't know, how you feel or what you're up against, or not getting into that clinical trial, or not getting the information you need. So I make no excuses. I don't say I'm sorry or apologize the fact that I am out there fighting to get the best I can for my health.
Okay, so for those who have not got a chance to read your book, so could you take us back just a little bit as far as when you were diagnosed and like how long it took you for to get it? How
I
long
know
did
what
it
you mean.
take you to get a diagnosis?
Sure. I'm an oddity. Most people are between 5 to 7 years for a lupus diagnosis, and mine was significantly longer, probably because I first was diagnosed with Sjogren's, which is an autoimmune that usually attacks the moisture producing cells in the body, in addition to other things. So I had that diagnosis and I was diagnosed with neonatal lupus. That's what a blood test came up. I know it's so weird. And
What?
everyone, yeah, I know. I don't know. And doctors were like, "You're not a baby." I'm like, "I'm not a baby." And so they just disregarded it,
Mm,
never to be brought up again. But I kept having all those weird things like vitamin D and white blood cells were low and platelets were low. And I've always had mouth sores. So I think if it wasn't for me being like, what's up with this? What's up with this to my doctors over and over, we might not have an answer to it being official. So it was during COVID when I started losing my hair, and it got, for me, that's very serious. My hair, oh,
yeah,
hell
yeah,
no.
yeah,
Hell no.
yeah. I think we
No,
all
no,
got
no. Uh-huh.
that.
So that's when luckily, my doctor was waiting for my ANA to be positive, which we know is just, you don't, you can have an ANA and not have lupus, and you can also have lupus and not have a positive ANA. So, but when that came up, she was like, okay, I'm gonna send you to another specialist. And that's when I got diagnosed. So it was a long process. I have probably had lupus as long as I've had my oldest daughter. Her name is Anna, and she's 23 now. So I bet you I've had lupus the whole time because I had a terrible, terrible, very rough pregnancy, and I think that's what kicked off lupus into my body.
hmm So, how old were you at the time when you had your daughter and you started noticing the symptoms? Because,
I was young. I was such a baby. I was pregnant with Anna at the age of 24.
hmm
Yeah, and then, like you just didn't know. I would ask dentists, like, I keep having all these sores on my mouth, and the dentist one would be like, it's no big deal, or another one would be, it's probably stress, and you would just go, oh, okay, and like you would just kind of go on, or my kidney issues are always off, but my primary care is like, it's probably fine. We'll just test you next year,
mm,
right? So it's just a very interesting thing, and I had only gone in to get a doctor to figure out what was wrong because my joints were killing me, and I've always taught group fit as an adult. So I was teaching boot camps, and I would come home and cry, just what you want out of your instructor, right?
hmm
And that's why I went to an ortho who said, "You seem fine, but maybe we'll run some tests if you want." And I'm like, "Yes," and that's how we found Sjogren's.
mm, wow. Whew. Some people's journey is definitely
Oh
different
yeah.
because, I mean, the misdiagnosing and the lack of just awareness of like being able to hear a person out because they have you in that room so quick.
Mm-hmm.
They don't really get to know. It's like you really have to use your voice. And then you never even heard of these things before. It's definitely gonna throw you off.
Oh yeah, absolutely. And as you know, when you tell someone you have lupus, they always say, "Oh, like Selena Gomez," and I just now say, "Mm-hmm," and
Yep.
we move
Or
on.
oh, my auntie had died from that. Like what?
Oh yeah, yeah, yeah. But I have, after I wrote the book, I've had a lot of people come back to me that are my friends or my family, and they say, "Oh, I feel like I wasn't a good friend to you," and I'm like, "Why?" And they're like, "I never knew what you were going through," or
hmm
my aunt had this, and she never said anything about having lupus, and I'm like, "Yeah, can you imagine what our loved ones have gone through?" And it's just now, I think starting to get a little bit more light.
Yeah. So, in your book, you emphasize the importance of nutrition in managing lupus symptoms. So, can you discuss some dietary tips or recommendations you found beneficial
Hmm.
for individuals?
Sure, sure. I was excited to get into this chapter of all chapters because I was going to find out the secret food, and I was going to tell everyone, right? I wasn't going to gatekeep it. It was going to be, pomegranates or whatever
Yeah,
it
and
was.
yeah, it
Yeah.
wasn't. It wasn't.
No, no. But it's good in some way. It's good in some ways
Yeah,
that
yeah.
I've even participated since I wrote the book in like clinical trials, nutritional trials about lupus to try to see if we can
Okay.
find something. Nutrition is a hard way, but we should first all know that nutrition studies are very hard for many different factors out there. So we have to be very critical when we look at some of these trials and the results. But what I can say is how I eat is how someone would eat if they had cancer or if they had heart disease, which means we try to eat a lot of fruits and vegetables, less processed things, whole grains. It sucks, but I really try to limit my sugar out
Mm-hmm.
there. Get some good nuts, get some good healthy, omega 3s, some good fatty oils. I do the things that I know I need to do, and I try to 80% of the time eat pretty good. And the other 20%, I do not feel guilty at all. I simply enjoy what I eat.
Yeah. Yeah, and I think that a lot of us should find those time frames where we can just enjoy like food and like how it makes you feel versus like, oh my
Yeah.
god, I'm on my diet, or I'm gonna mess up, or I'm gonna gain weight, or I'm gonna, it's just like if it makes you smile in a moment and put joy on your face, I definitely say eat
Oh
it.
yeah, yeah. And you should hopefully if you're doing decent job all the other times, you should be like, well, this is fine. My body can sustain this. But then we
Yeah.
also have that, we're constantly being aware of ourselves. So in the morning, if we feel extra bad, we have to kind of go back like, okay, did I sleep bad? Did I move? Did I not move enough? Or did I eat something that might not have agreed with my body?
Yeah, and that's the importance of some of the things that I did want to bring up because I liked your section right here on page 67. You're talking about the link to a positive and like the routine and like tracking
Mm,
everything down. Like when I tell
yes.
you that resonated with me a lot only because I come from before getting into this, I was really, really heavy in the planner community.
Mm,
Meaning like having multiple planners and tracking everything down and staying organized, mainly because I know that lupus in my brain and it's just so much information that I have to remember, not just for me, but my family. Like I'm raising these
mm-hmm.
kids and I have to
Yeah.
remember doctor's appointments and symptoms of what they've been feeling and did they have Tylenol and all the things, right? So I'm definitely like, oh, that's so cool. Somebody else agrees that you must track things down.
Oh, yeah. Look at our memory. I mean, first of all, our lupus brain can easily come into play, but just in general, like, what did you eat for dinner last Wednesday?
Like I have no idea.
I have no idea. I don't know anything. So we
Yeah.
think we know, right? There's a stat that says that I think most of us think we have some self awareness, but 80% of us don't. And I'm sure I'm included in that. Like, it's okay to write things down. It's okay to try to track some of these trends. There's some great apps out there, or even just a plain old notebook.
Yep.
We
I
just
have
forget these.
several.
Oh, yeah. Oh,
Several.
yeah. Yeah.
Yeah,
You
that
can, I mean,
they are my second brain pretty much.
yeah, yeah, absolutely. I mean, also we have to remember some people listen to learn, some people watch to learn, some people, read to learn. And for me, when I do something and I write it down, that's my way of learning.
hmm I think for me, I like to watch things to learn,
Hmm.
but I feel like if I write it down, I'm gonna put action to it. If that
Yeah,
makes sense.
yeah,
So if I
that
wrote
does make
down
sense.
what I saw and just take notes, then I go back to that and I'm like, okay, I'm supposed to do this, I'm supposed to do that, I'm supposed to
Yeah,
edit that
yeah, yeah.
reel, and
Oops,
I was supposed
whoops.
to,
Yeah,
yeah. So it's
yeah, that's so
definitely helpful.
true.
I think that I wish the community used that more and
Mm,
and really use that in all areas of their life, not just like tracking things down, but also for movement. Like to
yes.
I feel like when I got into it, I wanted to do yoga like really, really bad. Like I wanted to move my body and I wanted to stretch. And it just took a lot for me to kind of fully understand the concept of like how much work yoga really is.
Hmm. Oh, yeah. Hmm.
But I would write it down in my planner for like 3 months. But eventually I went to a yoga studio. I signed up for a membership and I like learned it and it was so good. It was so,
Yeah,
but
good
it
for
was just kind
you.
of like that step of me actively putting it down over and over again. It was
Hmm.
like I was training my brain to eventually build myself up to it. So I feel like that's something that people could use, when they kind of feeling down and don't really want to get out. Just write it down anyway, like with the
That's
intent
great.
of
Well,
being
and
like,
we have to keep in mind, let's say with the yoga as an example, you wanted to do yoga, uh, reading a yoga book, watching a yoga video, even if it's
mm-hmm,
on TikTok, or maybe just doing a one pose cat and cow. Like we often think we need to do like these grand things, like I need to do a handstand and crow pose in order to be doing yoga. But we have to give ourselves the grace and the ability to learn, so we can start really small, and that still
yeah,
counts, people. You don't have to
yeah,
go walk 5 miles or 10,000 steps a day. You can go and, if it's hard to walk to your mailbox, can you walk to your mailbox and back twice? Start
yeah,
where you are.
mm-hmm. So you also touched on the impact of lupus on relationships.
Mm. Oh, yeah.
So that is going to include how it affects our sex life. And I want to know how you navigated these challenges because, man, that.
My daughters do not like that I talk anything about that.
I'm
They're
sorry,
like
but look, we
appalled. I
need
know.
to
I
know.
know.
My
No.
audience needs
Yes.
to know.
How I dealt with it was, I mean, I thought I was so witty. If you saw me the day where I was like, an orgasm a day keeps the rheumatologist away, I thought I was like going to win the Nobel Prize in my brain for coming up with that. Um, I just thought it was such an important thing. It's part of everyone's relationship, whether, it's important or not, ranks differently with everyone. But I think our doctors barely have time to answer some of our questions. They're surely not going to get into the idea of sex. And if we get to a GYN, the GYN might not even know what lupus is or how to deal with it. So I thought it would just be a perfect way to put things together. I was surprised what was out there, like the orgasm lab out of Rutgers. And I'm like, what? There's an orgasm lab. So it was just a lot of fun. I don't shy away from topics that are hard. In fact, those are kind of the things that I'm willing to go there. And certainly if I try to use myself as an example, which, you don't always want to do, but if I try to show that it's okay and we can still just give it a try, hopefully it turned out as something people can do as well. Gives them the grace to kind of make mistakes and address the issues. I think that through the book, I've really, in looking around at the life I have, boundaries are really hard for people, right? It's hard to talk about the things that are painful or that are challenging or that someone might feel guilty or feel shame about. And so I really wanted to rip the band-aid off and just say, like, here, this is how we talk about it. This is how we do it. And, like I said, you don't even need a partner in order to still continue to be sexually active for yourself and find pleasure.
That is true.
Yeah. I mean, like, yeah, I try to be very sensitive to a whole bunch of different people out there.
Yeah, I don't know. It's just definitely a touchy topic because I know it's been plenty of times, like you said, it's definitely the boundary thing, and if you don't or you're not clear on that, people are going to try you.
I know. Yeah.
They're gonna
Yeah.
whether
You're
you
like
love
this.
them or not, and a lot of times they don't
Yeah.
even mean to. I don't think that a lot of times they are aware of like the capacity of how you're feeling at that moment. Like you just like would they use the theory of the spoons? Like, look, I got
Yes.
1.5 spoon, if that, and half of that is for my shower, and
That's
the
right.
other half is to put the kids to bed.
Yep.
And then I got to do this too. It's kind of like so. Having a partner that really understands and respects where you are at that time is so valuable. Like,
And that's a good point. And even if they can't understand, but they can respect, okay, we can get there.
yeah.
Right.
Because I
Yeah.
mean,
Like
everybody does still want their needs met, so they might have a little
sure. Yeah. Oh,
attitude.
yeah. I like that. Yeah. What is the saying? We don't see the world as it is. We see the world as we are.
Mm-hmm.
Like,
That
we
is
may say
true.
we need this and this is what we feel, but our spouse will be like, what do you mean? You've been laying on the couch all day. And I'm like, well, I need that. And you go get your own food.
Yeah, because it doesn't just apply to sex. It could be
Yeah,
anything that you just not feeling well enough to do with they're not used to you not being able to do. So,
very true.
all right. So many questions that I have, but I really want to get into the theories or like the statistics of what it is to pass your children,
Mm,
especially your daughters, lupus, and like your experience personally with
hmm
being on this journey with your daughter.
Yes, yes. So, just so your listeners know, when I was diagnosed with lupus, 5 or 6 months later, my oldest daughter was diagnosed with lupus. She was just like me. So she didn't have a long wait. She didn't have a long time to suffer. But Anna had had mono in her freshman year of college, and she was sick the entire rest of her college days, ER visits and such. She was a mini me. She even had, back in high school, low vitamin D levels. And so I was still really new to being diagnosed, but she just seemed so much like me. So it was good that she got a diagnosis early, that she didn't have to suffer too long. But you could easily, write a whole chapter about mother's guilt, right? We have guilt about lots of things, but I really let go of that surprisingly. For me, surprising, I still say looking back, because if I knew better, I would have told her. I would have
Yeah.
told her, like, like, how can she avoid mono in college, right? Like, get a new room, live by yourself. We don't want you to get this, but I wasn't diagnosed at the time. So I'm grateful that I can at least give the kindness there. But on days when life is rough, lupus is really bad, and I don't want to talk to my husband, and I don't want to talk to my friends because it's really bad, I will always talk to Anna, and then my younger daughter, her name is Kaya, who doesn't have lupus, but I will always talk to them. And it's so nice when Anna can just say, I'm feeling like this, or this is going on. So as having an adult daughter, it's so great to have a resource there. While I didn't want it that way, it really has been quite a blessing back and forth, on both ends.
Yeah. I'm just curious to know what her perspective is like from her side. Like, what is it like to actually navigate lupus early age and still have you know, like somebody right close and personal to be able to
Yeah.
like guide you through that because
Well, she's told me, like, she'll say many times, I do not want to be a lupus spokesperson. I don't want to be an advocate. I'm just a 23-year-old trying to live on her own and work a full-time job, which I totally get. And that's understandable. And I try to tell her, you know what, no matter what you do, you shine some light on lupus when it comes out. So I think it's been hard. I think there's days like you and I have probably too, where life feels unfair and you just want to be able to, like, she's like, I just would like to go running, but I can't because my joints are killer. Or she's on this new infusion, and she's like, I'm so exhausted from having this infusion. So I think it takes a while to come up with acceptance. And, having lupus is definitely a grieving process.
so how long has it been since she's been diagnosed?
2 years?
So she was
Two.
21?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah.
Just, yeah, not a great age.
I got my diagnosis at 20. So,
Oh,
yeah.
yeah. I'm very cautious, certainly on my younger one who's had low vitamin D. And I tried not to tell her I was flipping out, but I'm like, oh my God, low vitamin D, right? We know what some of these precursors are. So I will send her to the doctor. I'm like, you need to get all these blood tests done. And she knows, I'm like, my kids are half Asian, so they Southeast Asian, so they can get really tan. So I'm always like, okay, stay out. I know you love the sun, but stay out of the sun. So it's trying to allow my youngest daughter to live her life without taking, I think, too big of a risk to increase the chance of it. Because as we were talking about right before we started the podcast, research varies, but usually we've heard that when a mother has lupus, her daughter has a 10% risk of getting lupus, whereas a son may be only 2%. So there's things we can do that we, want to be cautious on, but then I also don't want my daughter, my youngest daughter, to live with the fear of, you know, having a life, because she might not ever get it.
Yeah. Ooh, that's so like heavy, I guess,
It is.
in my mind because I have two girls and I want to,
Mm-hmm.
you know, do all of these things just to be well, to see them go through life and, be happy. But what are the chances of them having to be in this crazy ride with me with their
Mm.
own diagnosis? So I'm just like, huh?
Well, the way I try to think of it two ways. One, as we know, lupus research, it is constantly evolving. We've seen great progress, CAR T cell and everything coming up nowadays, so new medicine. So that's one. And two, the younger that they end up with the diagnosis and can start taking medicine, the more manageable it'll be. I was over 45 when I started taking medicine, and I had decades of inflammation out there, and so I'm hoping that Anna will have a much better future because she's been able to manage it and keep it reasonable for a longer period of time.
Yeah.
And
Okay.
fingers crossed that it just never happens for your daughters.
Yeah, that's definitely. I guess for me, once the neonatal part kind of passed, I
Yeah, yeah,
didn't
yeah.
think any more about it of them possibly or potentially having to go through this too in their lifetime. Like So hearing it or just reading it, I was like, man,
Mm,
like, okay, whoa, I might need to be a little bit more aware of like how they move around and symptoms and things when they saying, oh, I
mm.
might be tired and pain. Like really
Oh yeah,
like
yeah, yeah.
look at
Hey,
that.
you pull out your own little planner. Okay.
Yeah. Would you say you was feeling
Oh,
on Tuesday?
yeah. Okay. Well, 2 months ago, you said
Yeah.
that's
Building a
right.
support network is highlighted as essential in your book. So, can you share your
Mm.
experience with finding support and advice for those who may be struggling to establish their own support squad?
Yes, yes. So first of all, you can be a choosy chick all you want. Just because you grew up with a family member, that family member doesn't have to be on your support team. You get to assemble your group of people that you think would be best from you, a friend, a neighbor, a family member, an aunt. So that's really important to know because you can still have those family members. Let's say parents, for example, maybe they're not on your support team. They're still in your life, but perhaps they're ones that you don't talk about right away when something has changed with lupus, or maybe they're not the ones you go to when there's something you need for lupus. So I am very protective now of who I let in my life, the energy that they may take from me. That's very valuable.
Mhm.
So in the book, I talk about being a choosy chick out there, letting go of some and holding on to others. The people who are in your life,
Mhm.
ideally, the best time to ask for help is when you don't need help. So that's part of the plan I suggested, is to come up with ways. Think of what you might need from someone. Think of the people who might be near, like, hey, in case I ever need it, would you be willing to pick up my daughters from school or take them to gymnastics, or whatever it is, to secure the needs that you have from people ahead of time. And that means that when you do feel bad and you have hardly any energy, you can pull them in.
Yeah, and I talk about that before of just like pre-planning for your flares because
Hmm.
if you don't, then you're gonna be trying to manage way too much and you're gonna get upset because you can't do it.
Oh,
And
yeah,
a lot of times the stuff still has to be done. So yeah, having
it
that
does.
pre-plan, it's all about the planning.
It is, yeah, it
It's
really
very
does help.
important.
Yeah. That's why I learned to, when I make soups, and like I'll freeze soups
Hmm.
and just put it in, and I know if I'm sick or I feel bad, it's just an easy way to pull things up and get them going.
Yeah. What are some misconceptions about lupus that you aim to debunk through your book and advocacy work?
One of my biggest ones is I want people to know that their life isn't over because they have lupus. Their life is just different, which is a
Hmm.
big distinction. You can still do a lot of the things you want to do, but maybe they're a little bit different. Like the yoga example, maybe you're not doing, you know, big handstands and things like that, but maybe you're able to practice every day. The
Hmm.
other thing that I think is really important is I want women to know that, sure, lupus has been cruel. They have robbed you of a really big piece of your health, but we still have control over that remaining piece, and how we treat our remaining health is absolutely one of the most essential things in our lives. And so we
Yeah.
have to understand it's not going and climbing Mount Kilimanjaro. It's doing small things every day that impact our health, like, what we watch on social media, or what we consume in our news, and what type of relationships we have, how we move our body, and do we get outside into nature, and do we really prioritize our sleep? These are the really important things that make us and comprise our well-being and our health, and we should not underestimate the power of those at all.
Hmm. So right.
Yeah. And the last
Finally.
one,
Oh,
oh,
go
go ahead.
ahead.
I would say the last one, I would say that despite what we want, there's no quick fix for our health. We want it, right? We want something, and we take our lupus medication, but that does not solve everything, right? I remember when I'm like,
Mm-mm.
what? Well, I still feel like crap. What happened? So there's no quick fixes. And when we understand there's no quick fix, that gives us the idea to turn back around and go back in there and do the things that we know we need to do.
Yeah, that answered my question because I was going to ask you, what do you hope readers take away from the book,
Oh, there
and
you go. There you go.
what do you want them to feel empowered to do after reading it? And sounds like,
Yeah, yeah, that's definitely one. The other one I would tell them, I don't know if you felt like this. You were a young thing when you were diagnosed, but when I got diagnosed, it was like my identity. It was like some new tattoo or some shirt every day that said like this person has lupus. And so
Hold
another thing I want women to know is that they are not their lupus, because who would want to be their lupus? That they are very much more than their lupus. I think it's easy for women. I can only speak for myself to identify like I'm a mom, I'm a wife, I'm an author, I'm someone who has lupus. But if I am only that, hmm, I think that would be not the whole breadth of what I could be in life. And so that's what I want women to realize, that lupus is there. It's going to hang out with them the rest of their life. But the goal is for it to get in line behind you, behind the many roles that you will be in this life. Lupus is just one of them, and that they are much more.
Yeah, that's powerful to leave with.
Yes.
Okay, so where could they find you, and what other things that you have going on that they could get from you and learn from you?
Sure. I'm on Instagram at Amanda Chay. My book, here's the book, The Girlfriend's Guide to Lupus, can be found on Amazon. And then I have a website, amandachay.com. And you'll see me, certainly if you're in North Carolina, you'll see me at some of the events and speaking at the events. So I would say if anyone has any questions about anything, please reach out. I would love to share whatever knowledge I can to help anyone on their journey.
All right, you guys, thank you for tuning in for another episode of the Lupus Beats podcast. And please catch up with Amanda. Please go check out her book. I haven't currently finished all of it, but it's so good. And I want you to get all the information there because it's definitely your girlfriend's guide. And until next time, you guys, peace and be intentional. Bye.
Bye-bye.
As we wrap up another episode of Lupus Speaks, I hope you are leaving with renewed inspiration and a belief that dreams are attainable despite lupus or any chronic illness. Let's keep the conversation going by connecting with us at Lupus Speaks on Instagram, TikTok, and YouTube. Please remember you are not alone on this journey and that your dreams are not defined by lupus. They're powered by your strength and determination. So until next time, you guys, peace and be intentional.